All right, so today is Friday the 13th, and we have 2.5 weeks left till my shoot. My shoot is on June 1st. I'm getting very excited. We are at the tail end of this. I weighed in at 167.7 pounds today. I'm 5'9". This is the lightest I've ever been in a really long time. It's the leanest I've ever been in a really long time since I did my bodybuilding show years back. So I actually did a photo shoot in 2019. I think I can pull up a picture right here and show you guys that. 2019, I weighed in at 158.5. I actually pulled up my metric tracker from back then. So I'm about 10 pounds heavier than I was. And right now, I believe I am a little bit leaner than I was at that photo shoot, which makes me really excited because it means I put on about 10 pounds of muscle. And in 2.5 weeks, I'm gonna be leaner than I was at the last shoot, which just goes to show you should spend a lot of time building and maintaining a healthy metabolism and trying to build muscle in between cuts. Don't just cut and cut and cut because you're gonna shoot yourself in the foot and you're not gonna go very far in the long run as far as maintaining a lean physique or getting as lean as you possibly can. Now, today I'm gonna take you through my entire day. So this is gonna be a day in the life vlog, but I'm also gonna teach you some of the strategies I will be using to get rid of the last little bit of stubborn body fat. The problem with the term stubborn body fat is that it's thrown out there so much in marketing. It's a buzzword and people grab onto it because it's sexy and it sounds like something we really want to be involved in. But the truth is principle number one in getting rid of actually stubborn body fat is just patience. It takes time. For example, stubborn body fat for me is the lower abs and around the love handles, which is common for most guys. I had veins in my quads. That's how lean they were before I saw my lower abs. So it just goes to show that you just need to have patience. But if you are at the tail end of a cut, if you have less than 10 pounds to lose, you're at that last like 5 pounds and you're pushing and pushing and pushing. Let's say you have like 4 weeks left. Like myself, when I started implementing some of my stubborn fat loss strategies, which I will share with you at the end of this video, you are going to learn the supplementation, nutrition, and cardio tactics that I'm utilizing at the tail end of this cut, which is when I only recommend it at the very tail end of a cut in order to lose the stubborn body fat. But before we get into that, you're gonna see the rest of my day. So right now I'm chilling in the office, just got in here. I'm working on some stuff for the Tailored Trainer app, some programming, and some design features. We're working on the UI experience. We're gonna be completely revamping the app, so I'm really, really excited about that. I got my son, AKA my dog over here, sleeping like a bulldog does, 24/7. And we're gonna get into meal 2 real soon. So I had meal 1 already. We'll pull that up on the screen. The macros on that as well. The meal has been the same the entire time. So I'm using a meal plan for this cut and just flexible dieting on the weekends. That way I have a little bit of flexibility when I need it, but I have a meal plan pretty structured throughout the week as well for consistency purposes and accuracy. So I'm eating the exact same meal that I have been this whole time, except now I have 1 egg instead of 2. I have a little bit less oil being cooked with that, so a little bit lower fat altogether, about 10 grams less fat than I was at the beginning of the cut, and we pulled a little bit of carbs of that. So I am pulling carbs and fats as I go because the cut is going on longer, which isn't ever fun. And I've pulled some calories out of the next meals, which you'll see too. So if you haven't watched the photo shoot prep day of eating episode 1 that we did, check that out as well because I go into all of my meals there too. But now I'm gonna get into some work. I'm gonna be working on the Tailored Trainer app, and I will catch you at meal 2. All right, time for meal number 2 of the day. This one is a high carb, high protein, low fat meal. Really, kind of all of them are at this point. As the diet progresses and we're trying to maintain as much muscle as possible, we want to preserve as much carbs in the diet as possible because that's gonna help our training performance and it's gonna help our muscle maintenance. So now we have a typical bro meal of chicken and rice. That is shredded chicken from the crock pot with a little bit of rice, and the rice is getting smaller and smaller as we go. So we're gonna cook this up. I'll share the macros with you guys, and then we're gonna move on with the day. All right, meal 2, mixing this up, letting it cool down a little bit. This is shredded chicken with Sweet Baby Ray's sugar-free barbecue sauce, highly recommended. Bell peppers, some seasonings, thrown all in the Instapot. Literally just takes an hour or 2 in the Instapot, it's amazing. And then I throw some rice in there. The rice is only 100 grams, so it has gotten less as the weeks have gone on, unfortunately, but we have been cutting calories. This right here is literally exactly, which is surprising, but it's exactly 40 grams of protein, 40 grams of carbs, 5 grams of fat. So again, a high protein, high carb, low fat meal. I'm gonna smash this meal, then I'm gonna go out, meet Travis out there, and we're going to film some exercise demonstrations for the Tailored Trainer app. I'll see you out there. Meal 3 is going down. Probably one of my favorite meals of the day. This is Protein. This meal is a high carb, high protein, lower fat meal. Once again, we'll put the macros up here on the screen. This meal has not changed the entire duration of this photo shoot prep. The oats dropped a little bit and the almond butter dropped a little bit, so the total calories dropped a little bit. But this is my staple pre-workout meal. And although there is some research showing that nutrient timing doesn't matter much for pre-workout, I do believe that the leaner you get, the more important it becomes, because the leaner you get and the further along in your fat loss diet you go, the more depleted you are of carbohydrates and glycogen. So stuff like this does matter. And there's some research to show that it is somewhat mental. So the psychology behind it actually matters, which means if you are used to eating before you work out and you enjoy eating before you work out and you feel best when you eat before you work out, you're gonna continue performing better if you eat before you work out. So this is my staple pre-workout meal. I'm gonna smash this, get a little bit more work done with some coaching calls, and I will catch you in a couple hours for my training session. And then last but not least, we're gonna take you through those stubborn fat loss strategies I have been implementing for this cut. All right, now it's time to get into the training. Today I have chest, legs, and abs, which is a little bit of an unorthodox program designed for a bodybuilding style program, which I'm gonna explain here in a bit. But before we do, I wanna explain tip number one when it comes to eliminating stubborn body fat. And I've already kind of alluded to it in this video, but it is patience. The reality is your body's gonna burn fat as it sees fit. Unfortunately, where we see fit is not where it sees fit. So for example, as a male, I typically hold stubborn body fat around my lower abdominals and my love handles, right? For women, it's usually hips and thighs. Well, the biggest thing is patience, because the duration of the diet is gonna show you where your fat loss is gonna occur in a timely manner. Meaning, when you get to that 12, 16-week mark, you start really dieting for a longer duration of time, your body will finally start to burn those stubborn areas. It's really just about patience and consistency. So if you're really looking to lose that last 5 pounds, my first tip to you is to just be patient. Do the basic stuff that you've been doing to lose the first 10, 20, 30, 40, however much, and just be more patient and grind through it till the end. All right, let's get into the training.
Yeah.
Now we are shifting from doing chest to legs, which is kind of an unorthodox way of programming, which is actually one of the tips here of losing stubborn body fat. As you go through a diet and you are patiently progressing and you're sticking to the diet for a long duration of time, the deficit of the calorie deficit will get deeper and deeper, and the longer you push through that deficit, the more fatigue is gonna accumulate. So the tip is pretty simple. You have to tweak programming accordingly to manage recovery better. That way you can manage your fatigue and not overwhelm your body with stress, because the more stressed and fatigued your body is, the less likely it is that you're gonna actually adhere and stay consistent to the diet and actually be able to burn that stubborn body fat towards the tail end. So my program mixes some days having legs and chest or arms, and I switch things around. It's not a typical full body or a typical upper, lower, push-pull legs, because I'm altering the frequencies throughout the week to just manage my volume so I can recover better, manage fatigue, and stick to my diet. And ultimately, that's what's gonna lead to burning that stubborn body fat. Let's get into some RDLs.
Yeah.
All right, so the next tip is kind of cheesy and I almost hate saying it, but the reality is there is a little bit of evidence to back up some of this. Now, most of the time I don't recommend fat burners, but right now I am going to recommend fat burners with a few caveats. So I am taking some in my fat loss pursuit right now, and I do think there's value in taking yohimbine and synephrine as a way to burn stubborn body fat, because there is research on both of them separately, and there's actually a research study combining the two along with caffeine, yerba mate, and some other stimulants that work synergistically to help burn stubborn body fat, but it's specifically stubborn body fat. So yohimbine has actually been known as a libido increaser. So there's a lot of times where you'll go to the mini mart and you'll see things like horny goat weed and things like that. A lot of those have yohimbine in it, and that's originally what it was created for, I believe, but it didn't work that well, and they found out that it was actually used better in higher dosages as a fat burning supplement. It's a maximally stimulative supplement though, so you have to be careful. Some people do get anxiety, jitters, shake a little bit, and if that is you and you start to feel those symptoms, I would suggest stopping it completely because it's just not worth it. But the reality is there are some people who can tolerate high amounts of caffeine. I am one of those people, and stimulants just don't affect them that way. So it's kind of a 50-50 take. But if you are somebody who can handle yohimbine, there is research to show if taken with caffeine in a fasted state, it can help burn stubborn body fat. Now, synephrine is something that you would stack with it, and it is not commonly used because it does have some of the same effects in the negative way, meaning that it can cause high blood pressure in some people. So that's why some people take ephedrine, which is something very similar to synephrine, but it is illegal in some states because it is too strong. And they will take baby aspirin or something like that to make sure that their blood pressure doesn't get too elevated while taking it. So obviously there's some caveats here that sound kind of scary, but the reality is for 90% of people, it is totally fine and it is suitable to burn stubborn body fat. Now, synephrine works in a pretty complicated way, and both of these supplements are really only recommended when you get to the tail end of a cut. So it's literally when you just have a little bit of fat left, because when we have stubborn body fat and it's kind of holding on for dear life, it is quite literally holding on for dear life. It has a higher amount of alpha receptors. And what alpha receptors do is block the fat cell from actually being mobilized, and being mobilized just means being burnt off. So your stubborn fat can't be burnt off if it is not being mobilized because it's being blocked by these alpha receptors. But when we take something like synephrine, it binds to the fat cell and kind of pushes away those alpha receptors and allows the fat cell to actually get mobilized. So when we take something like yohimbine with caffeine as a appetite suppressant and a central nervous system stimulator that actually helps your metabolism speed up and burn more fat, and then we combine something like synephrine, which pushes away these alpha receptors and actually lets us mobilize the fat cell, we might actually see some fat loss. And there's some cool research that actually shows this happening. But again, the caveat here is very specific. If you have even 10, 20, 30 pounds to lose, this is completely pointless. You're not at the point where you would need to do that. This is something for somebody who has 5 pounds or less to lose. You're at that last little bit, and I will typically throw it in with a client when we are on the very, very tail end of a cut, getting ready for a photo shoot or getting ready to step on stage, and we just want to make that final push. But that is a useful and a science-backed strategy to burn stubborn body fat. All right, the fourth and final tip is all about cardio. Before I break down cardio for stubborn fat loss, make sure you do me a huge favor, like the video, hit the subscribe button so you get alerted every time we drop a new video, which is twice a week. And if you have any questions on anything I've been talking about in this entire video, comment below and I'm happy to help. Now, when it comes to cardio for stubborn fat loss, I think there's a few ways to go about it, but the big key here and the reason I like utilizing it for stubborn fat loss is because I don't utilize it for regular weight loss. And what I mean by that is I try to avoid overutilizing cardio. And if I can get away with not really using much cardio at all, outside of just using cardio for health or general NEAT, so just tracking a good amount of steps, I do so. And I want to rely on the diet to lose the majority of the weight or the fat on the client. Now, when we get to the tail end of the cut, that's when I like to implement cardio. And I usually like to utilize low intensity cardio, because at the point where you're at the tail end of your cut or your photo shoot prep, in my situation, your calories are pretty low, your body fat is a lot lower, and your fatigue is generally higher, which means adding in high intensity intervals is going to be really difficult for you to recover from, and you're already trying to recover from not only the diet and your regular life stressors, but also from the training itself. So we want to save as much energy and fatigue as we can, which is why we use low intensity cardio. What I like to do, especially if I'm utilizing those supplements that I had referred to in the last tip, is do some fasted cardio in the morning. And now there's not any research to prove that this is necessarily better than fed cardio. However, there's also not much research on highly lean individuals doing fasted cardio. And it's a good habit to start your day with. It can help suppress your appetite and it can push your first meal out, which makes the rest of the day of eating better. So there's a few reasons to do fasted cardio in the morning. And I just like to do it low intensity so it doesn't cause any muscle atrophy or just generally too fatiguing, because we're not doing high intensity intervals. And the other reason I like to save this towards the tail end of a cut is because our body adapts to cardio fairly easily. And there's research to show that your BMR will actually lower the more cardio you do. And it makes sense because as we add more and more cardio, our body compensates by lowering the calories we burned elsewhere. So in general, NEAT or even the thermic effect of everything else we do throughout our day including our workouts, that caloric expenditure will lower when we add more and more cardio. So a good way to do this and avoid the adaptation is to save it until we're in the tail end of the cut. When we just have weeks left and we can change the modalities we're using for that cardio, we do so, and it is gonna help eliminate that stubborn body fat. So by the end of this video, you will have 4 really easy and good tips that are proven by research. Tip number 1 was to just be patient. The long term is the biggest key for stubborn fat loss. Tip number 2 was to use an unorthodox way of programming to make sure that you manage your volume and your stress so you're not overly training or overly fatigued, but you're actually recovering well enough to continue pursuing that fat loss journey. Tip number 3 was utilizing supplements, which comes in very sparingly, meaning we don't do it very often, but at the tail end of a cut when somebody's already really lean, yohimbine and synephrine can be helpful. And the 4th and final tip is to add cardio in, low intensity, some fasted, but mainly just low intensity in general, and we switch up the modality every couple weeks to avoid adaptation. So I hope this video helped you guys. If you have any questions, comment below, subscribe to the channel, and I'll catch you next week.